discussion that has come up recently and was highlighted very prominently in the comment section of my Brienne being a Targaryen descendant video last week is the idea that the story of A Song of Ice and Fire has too many secret Targaryens, and in turn, this is making the story seem less real, with the impact of these secret Targaryens lessening each time a new one is discovered. And while in principle I can agree with this sentiment, it wasn't until I actually sat down and thought about it that I realised there was a lot more to this issue than meets the eye, and how in many of these apparent cases of secret Targaryens, they are more elements, once again, of George R. R. Martin's realistic approach to his world building than some grand scheme where everyone has some kind of secret identity. But, at the same time, concern of there being too many secret members of House Targaryen is one that does also hold some weight to it. Thus, I hope to find out with this video if this really is just realistic world building by George R. R. Martin, or just a lazy attempt at shock value by giving half the characters a hidden backstory. And truth be told, the answer wasn't quite what I was expecting at all, and has kind of changed my view on the matter. When I think of Secret Targaryen, there are three characters that spring to mind immediately: Aegon, Bloodraven, and Jon Snow. The first of these, Aegon Targaryen, the once thought dead son of Rhaegar Targaryen, who had been smuggled out of the Red Keep with a random babe taking his place. Growing up in Essos as young Griff under the care of Jon Connington, when we first meet young Griff, and when Tyrion first meets him, he eventually does deduce who the boy is, Aegon Targaryen. Now, whether or not young Griff is or is not Aegon Targaryen is a matter for another video altogether. I personally do believe that Aegon is in fact a Blackfyre, not a Targaryen. But as the story stands right now, unless his true identity is revealed in future books, he is technically a secret Targaryen. For a lot of fans, the introduction of young Griff kinda came out of nowhere, with such a huge plot twist coming so late into the books, with only minor retroactive hints Aegon could actually still be alive. And while there is certainly a divided opinion on the addition to the story, there is a lot of elements to it that I do like and enjoy, especially how it changes the dynamic in Westeros after the War of Five Kings ends. More importantly, Blackfyre or not, the knock-on effect this addition of Aegon will have to the story of the likes of Daenerys is compelling to say the least. She's built her whole identity around being the last Targaryen, being the rightful queen of Westeros. The introduction of a character who is not only claiming Targaryen descent, but also technically would have a better claim to the throne than her, will really have a huge mental impact on Daenerys. I predicted for a long time that the Game of Thrones used elements of Aegon's story for Cersei Lannister in the later seasons of the show, and I suspect when Daenerys does land in Westeros, Aegon will have already taken King's Landing and would have publicly been crowned. But not only that, the small folk will flock to Aegon as a solution to the utter devastation that has been brought onto the realm since the War of Five Kings. This is surely going to have a psychological impact on Daenerys, and may lead to her downfall in a way that makes much more sense than it does in the show. I still think she'll probably blow up King's Landing, but not out of anger or hate, simply by accident, not knowing about the wildfire caches. And I also do believe that Jon Connington will play a role in this accidental destruction of King's Landing, but that's an idea for another video. So yes, while Aegon is a secret Targaryen, well, functionally is, his existence does add an interesting layer to the story, and that's where we come to the issue people do have with secret Targaryens. If you repeat the same idea again and again, it lessens the impact it has and waters it down. You then have the likes of the original secret Targaryen, Bloodraven, Brendan Rivers, whose role as Three-Eyed Raven in Bran's story has made him central to the main plot of A Song of Ice and Fire. But I suspect the reason many fans don't particularly take issue with this case in particular is because if you look back as far as the first book, you can kind of see the groundwork being laid for the fact the Three-Eyed Raven is in fact Bloodraven, and it becomes more clear as the story progresses. While I personally didn't see this coming, at least you can go back and start to piece it together And I mean, if we're going to be picky about the term secret Targaryen, strictly speaking, Bloodraven isn't a Targaryen. While yeah, he is one of Aegon IV's legitimized bastards, he never took the name Targaryen, and had always been Brendan Rivers. In fact, none of the great bastards, despite being legitimized, took the name Targaryen, and we don't even know if they could have done. The lore around it is kind of a bit vague. If we are being pedantic, Bloodraven technically wasn't hidden or a secret Targaryen. So other than young Griff and Bloodraven, there are technically speaking no other canon secret Targaryens. So you might rightly be thinking, where there's this notion that there are too many of them in the story? Well, it all comes back to one thing: fan theories. R plus L equals J. Rhaegar and Lyanna equals Jon is not only the most famous and popular A Song of Ice and Fire fan theory, but one of the ones which has the most evidence for it, with the revelation about Jon Snow's parentage being one of the 3 key plot twists George R. R. Martin told the producers of Game of Thrones when they were in pre-production for Season 1. While it has not yet been revealed to the reader in text as of yet, it has been taken as fact by fans for decades at this point. Like Bloodraven, this theory has a lot of evidence for it in the early books, with the theory seemingly coming to prominence as early as email newsletters and some of the first A Song of Ice and Fire forums during the 90s. Even before the show, many fans were taking this theory as fact, given the sheer amount of evidence. So it was no surprise for many when the show confirmed it during Season 6. So by definition, this theory being true does make Jon Snow the very epitome of a secret Targaryen, the prime example of it in many ways, and is kind of what people imagine when you're talking about the term. Thus why there's often little pushback when it comes to including Jon Snow in this discussion, despite the fact that in the text none of this has yet to be revealed to the reader, and thus technically is not canon until it is so. Yes, we have outside factors telling us it is, but until the moment it's in the text, in terms of the book, it will always technically be a theory. But as popular as Jon being a secret Targaryen is, it does give ammunition to the idea there may be too many secret Targaryens, as this theory, if or when it's proven true, would technically bring the number to 3. From years of looking at my comment section, while the theory that Tyrion is a secret Targaryen is quite a popular one, it is an example that just because it's really popular doesn't necessarily make it true. R plus L equals J is really the exception to the rule, but it's become popular because it is a fun theory that, for what it's worth, does have a fair amount of evidence that could point towards there being some element of truth to it. The core idea is that Tyrion is in fact not Tywin Lannister's son, but that of Aerys Targaryen and Joanna Lannister. There were rumours that Aerys did take unwanted liabilities with Joanna, and some have speculated that this, in combination with Aerys falling deeper into madness, is what led Tywin to leave court and abandon Aerys for good. Tyrion, Aerys' bastard son according to this theory, killed his mother Joanna during childbirth, being at the core of Tywin's sheer hatred towards the babe that is supposed to be his own son, dwarf or not. We then have a lot of references throughout the books in regards to Tyrion's obsession with dragons, and him wanting one. So while this is one of those theories that is certainly more out there is some proof to it that could be true. Alongside this theory is the idea that Tyrion is in fact one of the 3 heads of the dragon and would in the end be a dragon rider. While I don't personally believe this theory and feel that it would actually damage Tyrion as a character, if you do, then you are adding a 4th secret Targaryen into the story, and you can start to see the issue with so many characters having this secret identity. It lessens the impact of the twist, while also watering down the importance of someone being a secret long-lost member of House Targaryen. There is a variation of this theory, where Jaime and Cersei are the unwanted bastards of Aerys and Joanna, and while I do enjoy this theory, and the idea that Tyrion is the only true Lannister child of Tywin, I think in terms of tangible evidence, it's even more tinfoil than Tyrion being a Targaryen. There are, like Cersei and Jaime being a Targaryen, other secret Targaryen theories that are very reaching in terms of tangible possibility. You have the idea that Mira Reed is Jon Snow's twin sister as part of a variation of R plus L equals J. There's also several popular theories that Melisandre or Quaithe could be Shiera Seastar, one of the great bastards and lover of Bloodraven, Brendan Rivers. One of these more tinfoil theories I do particularly like is the the idea that the Tattered Prince could be Prince Maegor Targaryen, the son of Aerion Brightflame, who disappeared as a child after his father's death. But frankly, there's fundamentally little to no evidence that this could be true, but it is still a fun idea. So when we are talking about secret Targaryens, strictly speaking, we only currently have 2 confirmed in text, with Aegon functionally acting as one, even if he does turn out to be a Blackfyre. To the world and in the story, he is one. We then have Jon, who seems very likely to be one in the books as in the show. But other than that, we really are entertaining fan theories, and it's hard to justify these characters as secret Targaryens until we really get more hard evidence that points one way or the other. But that's where we get to the crux of the issue. It all comes down to how you are defining a secret Targaryen. The complaint I've seen the most, especially in my Brienne Targaryen video, is that half of Westeros seems to have Targaryen descent, and that's getting conflated with the idea of secret Targaryens. Well, yes, there are a lot of houses with Targaryen blood, but that's hardly a secret given the realistic way George R. R. Martin has managed his house's descent. House Baratheon, Tarth, Martell, Plum, Penrose, Velaryon, Longwaters, Hightower, and countless other houses out there who then intermarried with these houses, all have a drop of Targaryen blood. It's a realistic depiction of how royal houses intermarried with their own lords for political reasons and to build ties throughout their kingdom. When you look at the real-life family trees of the royal families of Europe, you can see just how many times they intermarried. House Targaryen doing this adds a layer of realism to the lore, but just because you have Targaryen descent doesn't make you a Targaryen. While Robert Baratheon claims the throne via his Targaryen grandmother, he is and always will be a Baratheon. The Martells of Dawn are hardly going to start recognizing as Targaryens because 100 years ago, a Targaryen married into House Martell, and that applies to all of these houses. Their Targaryen blood doesn't strip them of their primary identity. The reason the idea of Brienne in particular being a Targaryen descendant has been such a big deal for a lot of people is how much it connects Brienne to characters such as Aegon V, Maester Aemon, and so on. But more so that we know 100% that House Tarth does have Targaryen descent, with the possibility of that descent coming from one of Aegon V's sisters. Meaning, given the current state of the line of succession in Westeros in the books, she is surprisingly high up on that list, potentially even 4th. I really think it comes down to how you define a secret Targaryen. There's a real risk that too many of them would indeed have a negative impact on the story, and many of the criticisms of that idea are valid. But the reality is, many of these apparent secret Targaryens currently are just theoretical, and likely most of them will stay that way. But the fact so many people and houses in Westeros can trace their blood back to House Targaryen, to me, just shows the realistic way that George R. R. Martin has approached building his world lore.